any to find out. If you've lost money on investments missold by a bank, like a stocks and shares ISA or investment bond, then in just 7 weeks, you could get it back through AMK Legal. No paperwork is needed. Simply text LOST to 78900. That's LOST to 78900. Seriously, 7 weeks.
Low cloud and patchy light rain across parts of England. Later on, though, some southeastern areas are expected to turn much brighter and more pleasant.
नमस्कार। प्रेग्नेंट स्त्रियों के लिए एक विशेष सूचना NHS ENI की तरफ से। प्रेग्नेंट एशियन स्त्रियां 4 गुना अधिक कोविड-19 के चपेट में आ सकती हैं, जिससे उन्हें हॉस्पिटल में दाखिल होना पड़े। अगर आपकी तबीयत ठीक नहीं है और आपको कोविड-19 के सिम्टम्स हैं, तो आपको जल्द से जल्द मदद लेनी चाहिए। अगर आपको बुखार है, सूखी खांसी है या स्वाद और गंध की क्षमता चली गई है, तो सब ठीक हो जाएगा ऐसा समझकर घर पर ना बैठें। लोकल मैटरनिटी सर्विसेज 24/7 आपके लिए खुले हैं। अगर आप प्रेग्नेंट हैं तो जरूरी है कि आप कम्युनिटी मिडवाइफ या जीपी सर्जरी में अपॉइंटमेंट बुक करें। अगर आपको अपने स्वास्थ्य की चिंता है या अपने अनबॉर्न चाइल्ड के स्वास्थ्य की फिक्र है, तो मदद लीजिए। अपॉइंटमेंट्स आपको फोन पर, वीडियो चैट पर भी हो सकते हैं।
If you're busy, being busy, running your busy business, let AC Tax Services plan for your future and account for your past. AC Tax Services can take care of it all. Year-end accounts, tax returns, PAYE and payroll, along with experienced proactive advice and planning to help your business grow. Call 0191 249 8720 or find AC, that's ACC, Tax Services on Facebook. AC Tax Services, your local accountants and tax advisors.
The COVID-19 vaccination programme will be the biggest in the history of the NHS. Across the North East and North Cumbria, thousands of people will be vaccinated at our dedicated COVID-19 vaccination centres. To make it happen, your NHS needs your help. There are hundreds of new jobs and volunteering opportunities available at locations across the region. Visit covidvaccinejobs.nenc.com now to see how you can play your part in fighting the virus.
Oh, Kaz was upset and I didn't know what to say.
Jenny was great. She just listened.
4 hours to get to the coast.
I got to see the sea.
And I burnt Kaz's birthday cake.
That cake was rank, but making it was wicked.
As a foster carer, your bad day could be their best day. The Children's Family Trust are not-for-profit and offer real support for their carers.
Apply for the world's most rewarding career.
Search the Children's Family Trust.
नमस्कार। एक विशेष सूचना गर्भवती स्त्रियों के लिए जो NHS ENI की तरफ से दी जाती है। साक्ष्य बताते हैं कि गर्भवती स्त्रियों में विटामिन डी की कमी होती है, जो कोविड-19 की चपेट में आ सकते हैं। इसीलिए ये सलाह दी जाती है कि गर्भवती स्त्रियां प्रतिदिन एक 10 माइक्रोग्राम विटामिन डी की गोली लें। ये दवाएं सुपरमार्केट्स और फार्मेसी के काउंटर पर उपलब्ध हैं। गर्भावस्था के दौरान विटामिन डी लेना बहुत सुरक्षित है। ये सलाह NHS की तरफ से दी जाती है। अगर आपको अपने या नवजात शिशु के स्वास्थ्य की चिंता है, तो आप जल्द से जल्द मदद लीजिए। मैटरनिटी यूनिट से संपर्क करें जहां आपने अपने बच्चे की बुकिंग की है। ये सूचना भी आपको NHS ENI की तरफ से दी जाती है। अधिक जानकारी के लिए कम्युनिटी मिडवाइफ या GP से संपर्क करें।
For the community, by the community. Spice FM 98.8 FM.
Good morning. Sorry to those listeners or viewers even on Facebook that have been watching me and waiting for me to say something. In the future, we'll go live at the time that we start talking, so there isn't that gap. Although those adverts that are played and shared through Spice FM are particularly important to us all. Good morning, my name's Ammar, and sadly, I'm not here with my co-presenter, Jack, who's partying somewhere, I imagine, or he's flying or in a boat, or maybe not even doing any of that. I think it's walking that we are all doing in this day and age. So I'm delighted to be here. Gosh, over the last sort of 10, 11 years since we've been going on Spice FM, I must admit it's a rarity that I have missed a radio show and now a live broadcast that we have on Facebook. And we also try and help inform all of our viewers and listeners by broadcasting this on Facebook, on our newsletters and various other channels. So I'm delighted to say that very, very shortly, I'm going to be joined by Ben Haynes. Ben is an incredible marketeer and all-round nice guy. And delighted to have him to help come and talk to us, and so that you don't constantly hear my voice. And we're going to get some real good insights as well as to what's going on. And then at 10:30, it's an absolute pleasure to have His Royal Highness, Mr. Alan Curry, the incredible supporter of Asian Business Connections, and indeed myself over the last 11 years, and a staunch stalwart of the Northeast, and a great guy. So got a great show lined up for you. We'll be disappearing at slightly before 11, and I'll explain why. I'm joining an all-party parliamentary group that I'm a member of for BAME Business, and that's scheduled for 11. And I said I'd get there a minute or two early, and so apologies if we're going to cut it short. Apologies that Jaff's not here, and I might as well apologise 3 times for the weather. The week has been good, but it's not as sunny as it could have been. So, gosh, I've just coughed. And I think if you cough in this day and age, it is perceived as the same as, if not worse, than letting wind. Anyway, good morning. You're listening to Ammar live on Spice FM. Each week, we bring you news, views, and 1 or 2 clues from the business world. Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities. So whether you have an existing business, want to start a business, or just want to talk business, we can help. And we do help. Gosh, it's been another incredible week. Fast, frenetic, lots going on. And it's good to be able to come on the show and update you. And it's particularly good that I'm going to be joined by Ben. Very, very hopefully any second now is what he is. Let's see if we can get him in. And what I am keen to share with you is what has been going on more generally. So the vaccines, clearly that rollout continues at pace, 25 million plus. There was that hit and miss aspect of what's happening with numbers and figures, and the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine was pulled from Europe and then pulled back in. And I'm sure there's some politics to play in that. And it's such a shame that there is, because we're talking about people's lives. But if you get the opportunity, please take advantage of it. There's so many people that I've spoken to about the vaccine, and they need to come and access it. Good morning, Ben. Can't hear you. Are you there? Adjusting your microphone. Anyway, we can see you, which is a delight, but sadly for our radio listeners, that's not quite the same. So Ben is here, and he will be joining us as soon as he sorts his technology out. And it's interesting that we are so dependent upon technology now that, are you there? No, can't hear you. It's very, very interesting that we're so dependent upon technology that I'm just going to provide a little bit of technical advice to Ben whilst we're here. So you're going to hear me continuing to talk, and you can hear me type as well. So we're going to let Ben disappear and log off and log back on, see if that helps. And then in the meantime, I'll continue to talk, is what I'll do until we, Ben, feel free to say, oh, hello, as soon as, so Ben's gonna try turning it off and turning it back on, that age-old approach to fixing things. And it's funny because there's, I can see some slight interference with the light on this camera as well. So I apologize about the quality of that. In the good old days, when you were watching the television and the frequency would move, you'd turn a dial or you'd bang the side of it and it would sort the picture out. I certainly would never recommend banging the side of a monitor or indeed your television in this day and age. But yeah, it's interesting for those oldies like me, where I'm sure we even had a black and white television at one point, and you used to have 3-4 dials at the back where you'd change the contrast and the frequency and the and all of those things. And I don't think we had 3 channels. So you had 1, 2, 3, obviously, but you had BBC One, you had BBC Two, and you had ITV, or where we live, Time Tees. And then Channel 4 was launched to much fanfare, and Channel 4 then brought about a whole range of different type of programming. And really, for me, whilst this is my personal view, and if Jerry Springer, which I'm sure he is watching somewhere, if Jerry Springer is tuned in, then I'm just telling it how it is. But Jerry, when your shows started to be broadcast here, it almost, in my view, brought about such a dramatic change in what was acceptable on television or not, and what was acceptable on reality television. So you all of a sudden were presenting people in from society that you'd clearly gone out and identified as being slightly abnormal. And I'm using the term abnormal on the basis of the average normality that is perceived generally. So I'm bringing in some data and facts to the conversation just to underpin my argument. But in effect, this is just my view. And it was interesting to see these stories being shared on our televisions, which historically done either one thing, they either entertained you or told you the news. There wasn't this sort of this extreme viewing at that time. So Saturday evenings were Russ Abbott or Kenny Everett and people like that, and Sundays were songs of praise and whatever else, and Saturdays, I must admit, Saturdays are such good viewing with Ant and Dec. It is such fantastic entertainment. I was sat there laughing out loud, nearly in tears at some of that live television drama. And it's not quite drama, but it's really, really entertaining. And yeah, so it was wonderful to see that. And I remember that same experience as a child, sat there with mum and the rest of the family watching those particular programs. Ben.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yay! Good morning, Ben. Yeah, so
better late than never.
Ben's a technical expert. Thanks so much for joining me this morning, Ben. And I appreciate that. Every experience is a new experience, and every day is a school day. But I really wanted to get you on, Ben, and talk about, well, you and the work that you've been doing in regards to supporting businesses, how marketing, in your view, has evolved. So let's kick off by, Ben, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it?
So my name is Ben, and I am the marketing strategist at the SME Centre of Excellence. And basically, I'm leading everything marketing at the centre, as well as also helping external organisations with their marketing as well to grow visibility. I think, during a time like, what we're going through now, the pandemic, the transition is interesting because everything's moving to digital if it wasn't already. And so the approach that organisations is turning, and we're seeing that across the board, really. I think as well, in terms of the centre, startup organisations, it's more prominent now than ever before. Typically during a time like this, challenging times, startups are more common, whether it's for a negative or a positive reason. A negative being, you could be made redundant, or a positive, things could be shifting towards e-commerce, and that might open up an opportunity for you to make your passion a business. So we're really focused on helping startups essentially launch during these times.
Which is fantastic, Ben, because people will be distinctly unaware of the fact that there's been such a significant rise in people starting businesses. We've seen a 14% increase against a backdrop of the pandemic. So there's been such a significant number, a large number of people sort of going, you know what, I've either lost my job, or I don't want to work there, or I just want to try something different. And there's a rise in what they're describing as the passion economy. So people who have a real interest, either food or making clothes or knitting or whatever that is, and they're making a business from it. And I suppose having the right support at the right time is critical of that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, this turning a passion into a business, because actually some people may find that when they do turn the passion into a business, that sometimes that passion can fade when it becomes a business. But actually having that support there to guide someone like that through the startup journey is important, because it's something they've never done before, and it's actually completely different to just carrying out a hobby or a passion, if you will.
And people naturally will go and speak to an accountant, or they'll naturally go and speak to a solicitor, which is very important when you're looking at, I need to set up a company, I need some legal advice, I need some financial advice. People go and talk to a bank and such like, but they wouldn't necessarily talk to a specialist growth organization like the SME Centre of Excellence, would they? And why should they, Ben? Why should they come and talk to you, for example, on marketing and the rest of the team that's based at the SME Centre of Excellence?
Really, it comes down to the fact that the network that we have, no business has the same problem. Customers are not homogenous for us. No issue is the same or challenge is the same, and every business is at a different point. So whether they've got that challenge, they can come to us and know that we'll have the right connections to point them in the right direction. And that's the main thing for us, is making sure that businesses get the right support at the right time and for the right price.
That's the guarantee, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Right support, right time, right place. How are you seeing, can you share any insights, Ben, on marketing and things like that? What type of changes have you seen over the last 12 months, or if at all?
Sure. I mean, it's obvious for me to say that it's obviously transitioned to digital. In e-commerce is an area which has grown significantly the most. If you look at companies like Amazon, they've took off. If they were already thriving beforehand, but they've gone through the roof now in terms of sales because of their business model and the way that they market. But because of this digital approach now, it just means that someone can set up a business from home and reach an audience across the globe.
And you're absolutely right. So the importance of digital marketing, if anything, has become even more so, hasn't it? As in being able to, because there's a lot more noise as well. So people are receiving a lot more information back and forth, aren't they, through different channels?
Sure, and that can sometimes be a problem, because if there's obviously too much noise, it's actually how do you stand out from that noise? And with everyone now hopping on the social media trend or whatever it may be, it is harder. The other thing to consider is the fact that it's now cheaper for organizations to do marketing. Digital marketing makes the entry cost a lot lower. You can get involved now, and obviously it's free to set up a social media account. So in even websites, it's a lot easier for the average Joe to set up a website, and it's available at a lower cost. So it's great that these entry costs are coming down, the barriers are lower, and more people can get involved.
But that's just because people. So the thing that I reflect on, Ben, is that when people go to a solicitor, right, they'll expect to pay a few £100 an hour.
Sure.
And excuse me, when they go to a accountant, equally they'll expect to pay a particular level of fee. The challenge with marketing is that people now can log on and pay someone at Fiverr or people per hour or whatever it is, and get something done by way of a transaction. But the challenge they have with that approach is that they're sort of making assumptions. They're sort of using a very cheap service. And then when they don't get the results, they're ending up spending and wasting more time, effort and energy going back and forth. It's a bit like using a cheap builder. Now, that's not to suggest that every cheap builder is a bad builder, but you need to balance that cost and quality. So you pay for what you get, is my point. And I know that lots of people in marketing come along and go, you can get this, you can get that. We're gonna put you on the front page of this and do all of that, and you need to pay for a few months, and let's do your SEO, and then after 3-4 months that you go, but I haven't had the results that you said. Oh yeah, I know, but you then have to pay some more, and well, let's try this, and there's that vicious cycle and circle. So people get a bit, like, understandably distrusting or mistrusting of marketing. But one thing that I have seen is the work that you've done, and where you do the diagnostic, understand the persona of people, what is it that they're trying to achieve. And I've even seen you turn around and say, you know what, with that budget, with that, what you're trying to achieve, it's not something that we could help, or you could help them with. How important is that honest conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned earlier, not every business has the same challenge or issue. In some cases, not the same budget. So the approach is going to vary. And if we can't help, then we can't help at the end of the day. But we can certainly point you in the right direction. But as you say, the most important thing is starting off with the objectives. And that's something you won't get necessarily with a cheaper service or someone who's just looking to make you a quick approach, and you won't get the results. It all starts at the very beginning with the objectives. You know, if we take an example like an Olympic cyclist, and they're trying to improve the speed in which they do a lap, they need to understand that, well, we need to reduce the time that it takes to complete a lap, but actually what's the steps involved to do that. So it's those small incremental changes which are going to get you the results, but not you won't get that with everyone in terms of a marketing service. And it's something that we take great care in, because you need to work out the diagnostic and then understand the steps involved. Speed in which to do a lap, they need to understand that, well, we need to reduce the
Hello?
Hello?
Are you there?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know.
I can still hear you, see you. You were in mid-flow.
Oh, I'd ended a conversation.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that was the point.
I thought you were talking about speeds and sharing the importance of diagnostics and such like. Apologies, because I think what happened, that was purely my fault, is the Facebook page started broadcasting that we're broadcasting live, so there was a bit of a lag there. So I'm thinking that you're still talking, and that was my fault. So yeah, technology's working particularly well this morning. Okay, so the diagnostic, the importance of understanding your customer, and it's not one size fits all, Ben. But that said, you've created a very compelling offer for early start, or like almost a starter pack, haven't you, for businesses, for a highly competitive, like £199 a month, which I know for some people that might sound really, really expensive. But what do you get with that £199, Ben?
Absolutely. So this will all be live on our website, smecofe.com, very soon. But essentially, the package will offer you a brochure website. So you've got 1 to 3 pages to showcase everything that you do. And as I mentioned, with a website, you can do that across the globe now. You also get ICO registration. So a lot of people don't know about ICO registration. They aren't compliant. It's really important that you are. We'll make sure that you are. You also get included accountancy support. So again, it's being compliant and making sure you've got all the necessary steps in place.
Good.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Spice FM 98.8 FM.
Everyone's staying in. Everyone getting on. Most of the time. Every extra thing we're having to do, every plan we put on hold, every sacrifice we're making. Everyone who stays at home is helping stop the spread of COVID-19. Because the less we leave home, the less likely we'll come into contact with the virus. Everything we're doing is making a difference. Let's keep going. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
ਕੋਰੋਨਾ ਵਾਇਰਸ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਭੇਜੀਆਂ ਆ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਆ। ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਸਿਰਫ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਲਈ ਆ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਜੋ ਕੰਮ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਘਰ ਤੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, ਜਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਸਮਾਨ ਦੁਕਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਲੈਣਾ ਪਿਆ ਜੇ ਡਿਲੀਵਰੀ ਨਾ ਆਈ, ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਸਪੋਰਟ ਲਈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਣਾ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਬੁਲਾਉਣਾ ਮਨਾ ਆ। ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਭੇਜੀਆਂ ਆ। ਗਾਈਡਲਾਈਨਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਰਹੋ। ਹੋਰ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ gov.uk ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ nhs.uk ਤੇ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੋ, NHS ਦੀ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਕਰੋ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀਆਂ ਬਚਾਓ।
Everyone staying in. Everyone getting on, most of the time. Every extra thing we're having to do, every plan we've put on hold, every sacrifice we're making. Everyone who stays at home is helping stop the spread of COVID-19, because the less we leave home, the less likely we'll come into contact with the virus. Everything we're doing is making a difference. Let's keep going. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Sick
sick of the same old radio sound? Then you need vibrant radio. Spice up your life. Spice FM 98.8 FM.
We're back. Yeah, I'm glad you caught the fact that it was 10:30 and there's ads, Ben. I always forget about them. So we were talking about the package, and in particular the compliance is what you've got to. You know, the fact that you don't know what you don't know, and as a business, being able to just get on with what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and having the comfort or the assurance of knowing that everything that needs to be looked after and taken care of is.
Absolutely. And also included is, you know, you've got a registered or a virtual office, depending on what it is that your business needs. If you are just setting up from home, it's great because a registered office can protect the security of your home address via, you know, obviously your address will be via company's house. So it's important to have that protected. And also we'll give you access to the BMI sessions, which we'll be hosting every week, which is great for your business model innovation.
And you know, business model innovation is something that helps people come together. So what we've seen is that businesses have always worked in isolation, but they're now much more keen to work with one another, learn from one another. You know, the fact that we've delivered peer network activities and that's demonstrated the power of people. So the business model innovation is clearly something that sorry, I'm just seeing what Mr. Curry is. The business model innovation is a unique methodology that looks at the business's business model. So how do you operate? What do you compete on? So is that price or quality or product or service or space? And how do you improve it? How do you adjust it? How do you adopt it according to the environment that and those around you? So for me, that opportunity of having a package which supports you legally, it gives you the marketing platform, so you got a dedicated website, looks after your accounts, your policies, your procedures, and on a regular basis, it gives you access to some of the best expertise to look at a particular issue or a topic and help that. Cool. I think it's amazing. So Ben, what does the future hold? What do you think is going to change in your view?
Well, it'd be very interesting, but a lot of assumptions, I think, in terms of the marketing landscape. Obviously, we've moved to digital, but as people, you know, it's like the question that people keep asking: are people going to move back into the workplace, or they're going to continue working remotely? Whatever happens in terms of that aspect would ultimately determine what happens in terms of a marketing approach. Because if people are back out in the physical world, then there will still be a sense of traditional marketing involved and things like that. But you know, if people continue to operate remotely and they're using technology more because they're accustomed to it now, then digital marketing will still remain prominent.
Well, I agree. I think that, you know, we've definitely become more accustomed to digital. And you know, for me, here's Mr. Curry, but everybody is keen to cut through the noise and, you know, sort of and set themselves apart. So I think we definitely need to access your expertise and your support, Ben. Thank you ever so much for joining me this morning. I'm sure it's been hugely beneficial to all of our viewers and listeners, and it wasn't too painful for you.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me.
Great. All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good morning, Mr. Curry.
Good morning, Ammar. Was that last pun useful? Beneficial?
Very beneficial.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
How are we?
We're alive, as you can tell.
And likewise here.
Yeah. How are you doing?
We're doing fine because we're in our routine. So I just, you know who a little friend is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're doing okay. Thank you. I mean, Winston and I has good routines, as does Pat, to manage through what we're going through. So I don't think we've suffered as much as some of the people you hear talking about the lockdown, pandemic problems, etc. And we've both been vaccinated without any issues or problems.
Oh, wonderful. When were you vaccinated, Alan?
I was last Saturday. Pat, through one or two health problems, was a little bit earlier. Right. And I took my mother very early on, who's 85, to the Gosforth Park.
Okay.
And I can only sort of confirm everything I've heard on the radio and television about the efficiency of the process of being vaccinated. It is such a smooth operation. I went to the Life Centre, exactly the same. So I've had two experiences, and you cannot complain about the efficiency of this process.
Amazing. I'm just conscious that your camera is moving quite a bit.
Right, it's just wait a minute. I'm sitting in the hand there. Is that better?
That's better. I didn't know whether you wanted to place it somewhere. Oh, that's a lot better. No. That's stable. That's all good. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Yeah. So, Alan, do you want to say, just give our viewers, listeners, everybody, sort of a hello on and who are you? For those that are unfamiliar.
Well, I'm sure
how great of a guy you are.
Well, then you've got to go back. You always speak highly of your parents. My father always said, self-praise is no recommendation. So I always hold to that little line. But for those who do know me and those who don't, I'm a retired senior police officer who's been a member of the board at ABC since its inauguration. And between Ammar, myself, Jaff, and one or two others who've come and gone, managed to forge it into the reputable process business enterprise that it is. Of course, the other thing that Ammar knows, and Jaff, pack it in. Jaff would usually say news, views, and clues. Well, what we've managed to do with Jaff is explain to him, who didn't have much to do with dogs, the benefit of having a little friend. Unfortunately, unfortunately, as one can tell, when I talk about routines, it is Winston's routine at this time in the morning to play. So I did say, and this is why I'm jumping backwards and forwards here, I did say Ammar's ringing, and he was fine to start with, but as you can see, he is now getting a little bit sort of...
Some wonderful entertainment, Mr. Curry. I think that's a delight to see, and I'm sure, given the fact that we do have such a broad discussion on this show, that people would quite enjoy and are accustomed to background type of endeavours and distractions. Certainly in this new Zoom world where either kids or animals or whatever it is, is happening. So just thinking about the state of the nation, Mr. Curry, and thank you ever so much for at relatively short notice stepping in and stepping up to have a conversation. I was just conscious of two things. I hadn't spoken to you for a bit, and secondly, I've neither had our viewers and listeners heard from you for quite some time, and it's always a pleasure to get different perspectives. So I started to talk about world news and then local news and national news. So just thinking about that topic around vaccine and vaccines, and it's fantastic to hear that both Pat and your good self have now been vaccinated. Did you not have any symptoms or side effects whatsoever?
Absolutely none. And by pure coincidence, and I'm sure there's a number of maybe the listeners or now viewers may be doing the same as Pat and I are doing, but we got a document through the door over nearly 12 months ago now, when it started, asking if we would participate in an ONS survey of COVID. And so as a consequence, we've actually been tested every month for the last 6-7 months, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I'm sure when you see the ONS putting together some of their documentation and statistics and analysis, we probably feature in there somewhere. But whilst I had no difficulty wanting to volunteer and help, there was a little bit of a fortunate process that we nearly get a clear bill of health every month. You know, we get a letter through the post, and it's a bit like the pools. You get 3 X's. There's three boxes: positive, negative, or inconclusive. And we want the X in the middle box. And fortunately, and up to now, and hopefully for the future, we've been on the negativity box. But that's just another concept that's going on behind the scenes that probably a lot of people wouldn't know. And Winston obviously knows. Mr. Mortier. There we go. So that's what we've been up to as well. But I mean, you know.
So that was quite interesting that you participated in that. And what did that enable to happen?
Well, what happens is, and it's generally different people. I get a phone call the night before, and it's on a monthly basis now. And they turn up at the door and they wear their gloves and their mask. I get this long questionnaire, which develops within time. Have you had any symptoms? Have you shown symptoms? You know, work, occupation. Issues about whether you've been in contact with people or whether, you know, had to self-isolate, which fortunately we haven't at all now. But and then, of course, we get the test kits. The lady or gentleman don't come into the house. We don't leave the house. Socially distance. I'm getting quite good at swabbing the throat and nose, putting it away in the little bag, barcode on the side, etc., etc. And it's again, it's another slick operation. I know we've heard a lot of negativity about government operations, and maybe some cases rightly so. But there's maybe some of the better news or some of the things going on behind the scenes we're not always aware of.
Which is great that you actively participated in that. And equally, I must admit, whilst I have heard from a number of people about who had been vaccinated, about, you know, suffering some symptoms where they've had a sore arm or a sore head and such like. Nothing, and no one that I'm aware of certainly has had anything more than that. When I went, it was 2 weeks ago on a Friday. It was 2 weeks ago today, actually. And I must admit, Alan, I was quite anxious and apprehensive, is what I was.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You can see it's live, and I told you we're right into his playtime. You just brought this in, so it's definitely a live show. I tell you, I mean, when you say no symptoms and people talking about whether there are reactions or not, obviously you've mentioned my wife Pat, who you know as well as I do in the nicest possible sense. I got back into the car, and that, you know, you get a little leaflet, and there's some very common potential parts that you might react to. And the 3 that I mentioned was sore arm, headache, and temperature. Yeah. So as always, I got a lot of sympathy. As I got in the car, my wife said, "Well, you will have to have all 3 because you're a drama queen." So, you know, as always, love conquers all.
Absolutely. And did you have all 3?
I never had any. I had to.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
it's probably the placebo reverse effect. Once you said that, I didn't have any symptoms.
You better not.
Even if I do, I can't admit to it.
I think that's a good tactic. I like that tactic. So you're going to be, you know, I think we could sort of dramatically sort people's ailments out by telling them, "Oh, well, you're going to be like, you know," as in,
yeah.
But it's interesting because so I felt a bit. I didn't have a headache. I just felt some pressure on my head, a little bit on the Friday night. That might have just been a typical Friday night, but and after that, I was absolutely all right. I didn't certainly feel that much pain or anything like that. but nothing that I would sort of sit here and go, oh my gosh, you know, anything to report, nothing to report. And but interestingly, our daughter had a cough and a cold over the weekend, as kids do, 2-year-olds. You know, they're still, when they go into nursery, they're still sort of giving each other, their immune isn't as developed as ours. So this week's been quite interesting, that myself, my wife, and in particular have also had to contend with sort of cold symptoms and cough and things like that. And we've been tested and we're negative. You know, so because naturally the first thing you do is you assume that you've got it and it's the end of the world. And and there's no such thing as any other ailment, because you haven't experienced any other ailment because you've been in lockdown. So it's really, really interesting. But you know, the most important thing is for me, it's get out, get vaccinated if you can. I appreciate there's some alleged challenges with supplies, and they're talking about, you know, there might be some issues. But what was your view around Europe and parts of Europe, Alan, sort of withdrawing their approval of AstraZeneca? Do you think, you know, because of some potential, and the statistics are that you're more likely to be hit by a meteorite than suffer this potential blood clot type issue as a consequence of COVID. You know, what was your view about that?
Well, I think there's a few issues there because, you know, with my background, I did a bit of emergency planning, and I sort of always felt last year that this was going to be worse than anything we'd met. But the other thing I always thought was, as time progressed, we would get a little complacent as individuals because we hadn't had a problem. And whilst we're talking about the vaccinations, I'll talk about Europe in a minute. You know, or you may not, but the dog walking community, right, is still out there. You meet the same dogs. You never know the name of the owner. You just know the name of the dog. But one of my dog walking friends, colleagues who I see on a regular basis early on, they had the vaccine, sadly a little late, because her husband got the virus and currently is still in hospital. So I think when we talk about normality and things going well and statistics, that I think it always hits close to home when there's somebody you know's got a problem, as opposed to, so I think there's still an issue about complacency. And complacency about, well, I probably don't need the vaccine because the world's a good place. So obviously you and I are pro-vaccination. Then if you talk about the EU, well, I've got nothing to back this up, but you know what went through with the Brexit / Remain situation, leaving, what's going on. And whilst a lot of people put Europe up as the way forward in different issues, I suspect what's happened in this country, in the United Kingdom, has extenuated the problems they're having. And then you get into a situation, nothing to support it, but you do feel sadly that politics have come into where they shouldn't have, as opposed to thinking about citizens and population and health.
Excuse me. So I must admit that is and was my view, that there was quite a bit of politics and politicking in all of this, and including where there was conversations around, well, this vaccine's better and that one isn't, and this will do that and that one's, you know, it almost feels as if because it was made in the UK and because the UK has come out of the EU, and because, you know, everybody and every government and every sort of community will want to be pushing their particular vaccine. You know, there's almost politics being played here. Certainly that was my view. And then what about this atrocious murder that happened a couple of weeks ago, Alan, that allegedly committed by a police officer? And whilst I'm clearly not going to talk about that case because we don't know what we don't know, I'm really interested in your views on the fallout of that, and you know, the vigils that were being taking place, and this almost rise in gender inequality as opposed to equality. What do you think about all of that?
Well, I mean, we always say, you know, a tragic situation of anybody 33 years of age, and there couldn't be a worse set of circumstances that the suspect currently appears to be a police officer, innocent or proven guilty, but will be with a jury, etc. But it's always been my experience, bearing in mind my background, that the fear of crime is worse than the actuality, if that makes sense. And as you know, I started this with jokingly talking about how we were sort of mentioned as educating Jaff about the dog, and Winston is still pulling on my arm here, as you may be able to see there. Oh, you cannot now. There you are back. Sorry. But if you see what's going on at the moment, there's a lot of things in the news about dog thefts, right? And as much as I'm mentioning here the fear of crime, I'm actually being very cautious about where Winston is when he's off the lead with me. So there's no doubt that violence takes place. I would suspect, and probably know from a past, that yes, women are very vulnerable to violence, but so an awful lot of male people through different circumstances, either looking as if they've got money against a gang of youths, young kids, different people. And I really do have a little bit problem with this potential misogyny offence, because it's very good to sort out people putting together offences and crimes. But one of the things people don't seem to give a lot of thought to who make these laws is how you enforce them. How do you prove that somebody was a misogynist or it was a misogyny crime as opposed to just a crime? There are an awful lot of crimes on the statutes now. If I hit you, it's an assault. If I hit a female, it's an assault. Is it aggravated because it's a male and a female? I don't know. So I do think overreaction's a hard word, but I do worry about some of the things they put on the statute books, which look good in politics, but are incredibly difficult to prove or enforce.
And you're absolutely spot on. So I've said this many a time, and just very, very briefly on this point, that I don't know what it's like being white. I don't know what it's like being a female. I can only tell you what it's like being who I am and on my experiences. I can probably give some informed, educated, sort of my views. But other than that, I can't tell you what that is. And the reason why I share that there, Alan, is by encouraging and highlighting such a term and legalizing or regulating a term called misogyny, right? It's once again, it's targeting a particular, and it's creating more division, but it's targeting a particular group. It's targeting a particular gender. It's exclusively creating further inequalities, in that. Well, what's the converse of misogyny?
A woman who doesn't like men. I don't know what it's. I don't know what the terminology is.
But that exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are so many men who are abused. You know, the biggest rise in suicides is in men.
Well, I mean, obviously, domestic violence is a very current thing and has been for years.
I recognise that, and I'm not belittling or dismissing that at all.
No, sorry. The point I was going to make was what's not highlighted as much is the amount of domestic violence where it involves a male being harassed, violent, mental problems, with the female being the perpetrator, which is still very common as well, but never gets the same sort of highlighting as the female domestic violence. Both, you know, we're not saying one's better than the other, but once you get on a crusade, a bandwagon or whatever, I don't know if you ever listened to Douglas Murray. He's rather good at times when he's on the radio, and he was on about the sort of, we keep talking about the levelling up agenda, obviously for the Northeast, a lot of things you're involved with, but the levelling up agenda between male, female, different nationalities, different bits and pieces. And he made a point the other day when I was listening. He said, I keep asking people, when do you know you've leveled up? Because you cannot get an answer to that. Where does it stop?
And it's a great point. It's a very important point. So a couple of things that I need to highlight and say it is so important that every single person in the community should feel safe and secure wherever, whoever they are, whatever their colour, whatever their gender. And if females feel as if they don't feel safe in the streets and they don't feel safe at home or wherever that is, then clearly there's something wrong. Earlier last year, I was looking at some statistics, some incredible statistics, and just for the last few seconds, because I think this is important. This is really important. There was an article in the Sunday Times, which I regularly read, and well, on a Sunday I do. But it just talked about black people and racism, and the fact that black people are frightened of, sadly, in certain places and states, especially in America, of the police. That shouldn't be the case. And the police are equally frightened of black people. And that shouldn't be the case. But as in that we have these discrepancies, or whatever we want to describe them, it's probably not as strong a word. But all I'm saying is we need to look at things not in this broad brush type of approach. And it is interesting because, look, if some female is abusive to me, and naturally, I'm always going to, take it with a pinch of salt and not say anything or do anything or whatever it is. But God forbid that anybody was pushed to a point whereby they then spoke out and said something to that female because of their personality, and it had nothing to do with the fact that they're a female. But you then end up getting prosecuted because it's a female. That clearly isn't a good place to be, is it?
No, and of course, I mentioned before about the fear of crime, and bear in mind my background, I am getting a little bit more mature now. Winston and I are out most mornings at 6:30, and there's a couple of places I walk around here. We've got a little route, and there's one cut I walk down at 6:30 in the morning when it was the dark mornings. I always look behind me. I was just being careful.
We've got 30 seconds. Yeah, no, but I listen. There's many a place where I'd walk or be or walk through. Some of the meetings and some of the boards that I was involved in, they'd take place in sort of particular areas where they were predominantly white. The school where I was governor of was all white, at the time when I joined it. But you have to challenge those beliefs and behaviours and perceptions. Anyway, you've been listening to Ammar and
Issues.
Winston Allen.
Winston. All right, take care.
Right. I'll see you.
All the best.
Vaccine later today, and it's